Alright guys, and welcome to another video. Today we're taking a little bit of a break from talking about World of Warcraft, which is something I always get very excited about on the channel, to talk about a new upcoming MMO called Ashes of Creation. Before we jump in, just because I'm talking about a new game doesn't mean I'm never going to make a World of Warcraft video ever again. I'm going to quit the game, sell my computer and use the money to buy a shrimp boat and become a full-time shrimp fisherman and live in Cornwall. So if you're not interested in this video, then that's fair enough. Just come back later in the week where there will be more TBC videos. There's no need to get anyone's knickers in a twist. So many YouTubers and streamers have taken an interest in Ashes of Creation. People are even going as far to say it's the new WoW killer. I think people are definitely getting a little bit ahead of themselves when they say that, because let's be honest, how many MMOs have been tagged as a WoW killer and ended up with only 4 active player servers? Nonetheless, Ashes of Creation does appear to be an MMO with a lot of potential, and I think this is largely conveyed by the enthusiasm and down-to-earth nature of the lead developer Stephen Sharif, who is actually funding the project mostly out of his own back pocket. He said many interesting things in an interview with Asmongold, such as he's always been an avid MMO player who just wants to play a good MMO. He also satirically used a very accurate metaphor to describe MMO fans as a beaten and abused dog who, whenever a new MMO is announced, they get a little bit of beef jerky to get excited about, but then they are immediately smacked in the face again with a 30cm shatterproof ruler. In my opinion, he does come across as a genuine guy who wants to make a game to please MMO players, not shareholders, which is unfortunately the case for many developers these days. So let's count down some of the very promising ideas and game design decisions that will be featured in Ashes of Creation. I'll start by talking about something I think most of my viewers will be the most interested in from playing World of Warcraft: raids. So there will be raids of different difficulties: 8-player raids, 16-player raids and even 40-player raids, including world bosses. But what's most interesting about the raids in Ashes is the dynamic raid system, which means the difficulty of the raid boss encounters will adapt to your raid's performance. Let me give an example. Let's say you jump into a raid, you kill the first boss in your first attempt and you kill the boss very quickly. This means the next boss in the raid will become more difficult, and the bosses won't just increase with total health points and damage output. The boss will switch to a different AI profile, which means the boss will become more intelligent and the mechanics will become more difficult. New boss abilities will appear, new environmental hazards will appear, the health thresholds for boss enrage effects will change, and furthermore, the loot becomes better as the content becomes more challenging. One of the distinct features of Ashes is the creative decisions when it comes to overall class design. The class design will promote hybridization, customizability, and strategic playstyles. It will probably be very difficult to have 2 players with the exact same build. At level 1 you choose an archetype, which could be your principal RPG class like a mage, warrior or a rogue. Then at level 25 you can choose a second archetype to hybridize your character. And then it goes a little bit further, because the second archetype you choose gives you access to 4 schools of augmentation, which are essentially, from what I understand, the equivalent to classic WoW specs. Let me give you an example. Say for instance you pick a Warlock as your first class, which gives you the ability to summon an imp, who by default casts a fireball. But then you pick a Frost subspec when you're level 25 from a mage tree, and then the imp can cast Frostbolts. And then you pick another subspec that makes a Frostbolt apply a debuff that reduces the enemy's strength by 10%, and so on and so forth. The customization also extends to your gear, since any character can equip any type of gear, whether it's cloth or plates, which can be enchanted with non-permanent effects that can be swapped around depending on what kind of content you're doing. I think the most original feature of Ashes is the node system. Nodes are similar to your average World of Warcraft leveling zone, but the zone itself can actually level up through the gathering of resources, completion of quests, killing mobs, and world bosses. The zone may begin as a wilderness, but then level up to an encampment, then to a hamlet, then to a village, then to a town, and then eventually into a city. This means zones will never become redundant, they will be constantly changing in response to player activity. Furthermore, once your node levels up high enough, they can be populated by player housing, so guilds and communities can make their own little town. But only one node on the server can be the top dog node, and once you have a top node, you gain access to a number of benefits such as flying mounts, taxing residents for gold income, etc. and things like that. But then another node can declare war against the top dog node to invade and siege the city in a big PvP battle with hundreds of players, and in the process you can steal the resources such as things like mithril ore or anything like that from that node's bank vault. One of the issues with flying mounts in MMOs, in my opinion, was the fact that they essentially make you unexplore the game, they make the world feel smaller, and just make an MMO feel less of an MMO. Flying mounts and ashes will be much less accessible and also have cool abilities. Only the mayor of a node will actually have access to a flying mount, so that's one person per server, although he can give lesser versions of that mount to officers in his guild. So for instance, the mayor has a Grand Frost Dragon, he'll be able to give officers little frost drakes. And the mounts themselves aren't permanent, they need to be fed and properly looked after, otherwise they will just fly away. Furthermore, flying mounts grant access to unique abilities during node sieges, which means you can do a bit of Daenerys Targaryen from Game of Thrones, or the Nazgul from Lord of the Rings, and actually defend your castle with flyby bomb squads of fireballs. A number of social sandbox systems will be a core element of the node system, such as electing a mayor of your town, who will have to be re-elected every month, guild alliances with other guilds, or the opposite, citizenships within a node, open world player housing, and so on. When you kill a raid boss in Ashes, not only does just basic loot drop like swords and helmets, but also rare crafting materials which can also be used to craft the actual loot that drops from the raid. This means professions will constantly remain relevant throughout your time playing the game, and they're not just used to make pre-raid best in slot gear and then swapped out for engineering like in Classic WoW by a large part. For example, a dragon boss may drop loot from his treasure hoard, which you can pick up and Bob's your uncle, but then you can also use the dragon scales from that dragon to make some of your own powerful gear. This means you won't go 2 months without getting any loot like you do in Classic WoW. There will also be a different gear degradation to typical MMOs where you usually just have to pay a fee of gold to repair your gear. In order to maintain your gear, you must loot the crafting material I mentioned earlier to realistically repair your gear. So let's say you have a sword and use it constantly for 2 weeks, you may need to repair it and reforge it with some bars of obsidian, and if you want to maintain the powerful stats or unique effects that it has, you will have to go back and kill certain raid bosses, for instance a wizard boss, loot some magic runes or a magic crystal to break off the wizard staff and then reforge it into your two-handed mace. This means even when you're decked out in the best gear, there will still be a reason to play the game because you will need to maintain the best gear in order to defend your castle from other players trying to siege it. In WoW, if you're decked out in best in slot gear, there's not much for you to do other than totally own people in battlegrounds or re-roll your character. Ashes will also have a unique and realistic economy system. Say for instance you gather a resource such as skinning a polar bear from a northern region of the world. It will cost more gold in a southern hot coastal town than it will from round the corner of the cave where you killed the beast in an Eskimo hamlet halfway up the mountain, or something like that. Mobs also don't always necessarily drop gold over time. They will drop a certificate that proves that you killed the mob, which would be in a form of a resource like I mentioned, such as vulture talons or anything like that. There'll also be no pay to win systems where you can buy game gold with real game money, such as the WoW token, which allows for a totally player driven economy. Furthermore, if you can't fit all of your resources into your own bags, you can transport the resources with a caravan, so you can stockpile loads of goods. However, other players can actually attack this caravan and you will have to manually transport it by walking with the caravan all the way back to your guild's castle or your guild's town. So you need your friends or your guild to protect it on its journey, or I imagine guilds will form with the sole purpose to become caravan guards and charge you for defending your caravan. Or on the other side of that equation, guilds will form as mercenary guilds and focus on just looting caravans. I definitely think there will be bandit guilds out there, which will be pretty cool. There is, however, punishments for ganking people in the open world called the corruption system, meaning if you kill people, you will become more and more corrupted, and killing lower level players will give you an increased corruption than killing someone your own level. When your corruption stack's high enough, you will get a bounty on your head, and people can hunt you down for the reward. Then your corruption will be reduced by completing quests or doing other activities, and if your corruption is actually high enough, people will even be able to loot your equipped weapons and armour. And the last thing I want to talk about, although I probably missed a number of things, for instance there will be arenas and battlegrounds and other great PvP content, but I wanted to keep the video short and sweet. Anyway, it looks like there's going to be a strong and interactive Game Master team. The lead developer expressed how he actually wants the Game Masters to interact and play alongside the players. My interpretation of this is that it's going to be akin to the fun things GMs do on a PTR or beta server when it's about to close, such as spawning extra world bosses and other fun community events like that. But anyway guys, that's where I'm going to end the video there. My name is Medagoblin. Until my next video, ciao.